Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our beautiful, biblical, ancestral, biblical city of Jerusalem, undivided since King David's time. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Sitting here with another time, unbelievable guest. Love his insights. As you know, I've been a big fan and a personal supporter, literally out in the streets, protesting for his freedom for years. So it's a blessing to be able to sit with him, Mr. Pollard. Shalom, Yehonatan.
Shalom, Avi.
So we are talking today about the latest news coming out of a potential plan for Russian peacekeeping troops on the Syrian border with Israel, which is a disaster for Israel.
Correct. But
yet you're going to tell me the people behind this plan,
yeah,
and we're supposed to act not surprised. So you want to give some details
here?
The
story was broken today when the Syrian foreign minister visited Moscow and gave a joint press conference with the Russian foreign minister. And you have to remember, these things just don't happen. They're choreographed. So it's highly likely that he was asked to come to Moscow. This is number one. What's the background to this? Well, first, he asked the Russians to send a peacekeeping force to the Israeli border. And we'll get into that in just a second. And we're waiting for the Russian response, which I think we know already what it's going to be. Last year, Bibi sent his military attaché to Moscow to solicit the assistance of Vladimir Putin in rescuing a Russian-Israeli hostage. That was the ostensible reason to go to Moscow. The actual reason was the military attaché was suggesting that the Russians actually redeploy in Syria, because the Israelis realized, we realized at the time, so the story goes, that with the Iranians now out of the picture, it would be better to have the Russians in to separate us from the Salafis in Damascus and the Turks, who have an interest in absorbing a Muslim Brotherhood Syria into the Caliphate, this neo-Ottoman empire that Erdogan, the Sultan Erdogan, wants to recreate. There's been a lot of, in discussing this with some people today, there's been some real strange pushback on this, with people saying, well, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Remember when we had the Russians here, it wasn't so difficult to deal with them. And I just said—
people in Israel are saying that?
Yeah, analysts here. And I said, you know, what planet have you been living on? We had been trying to get rid of the Russians for over a decade. And if they said, well, you know, they let us bash their ally, Iran, around from time to time. And I said, yes, the Russians were playing both sides. But A, they didn't do anything to stop the Iranian buildup in Syria. And more importantly, they didn't do anything to stop Iran's logistical route through Syria to Hezbollah.
Right.
So I said, don't push this benevolent Russian presence too far, because it doesn't have any legitimacy. That view doesn't have any legitimacy. So what happened? Well, this past week there was a peace treaty established between Azerbaijan and Armenia by President Trump. And that absolutely set the alarm bells ringing in the Kremlin, because this is their near abroad. And here we are meddling once again. But what really got Putin mad was that there's a corridor between Nakhchivan, which is our Azerbaijani enclave, separated by Armenia from the Azerbaijani heartland, or Azerbaijan, I'll put it that way. Well, the Americans took it over. And both the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians agreed to it. It's the Trump International Highway of Peace and Security or something. But the US is going to run that completely. And I mean, that's fine as far as we're concerned, But Putin apparently went apoplectic when he heard this. Okay, we have to bear that in mind. The next thing you know, there's a telephone call between Putin and Netanyahu.
I thought it was really weird, the timing.
The timing was very odd, and nothing has been reported as far as the substance of that telephone call, which also is rather problematic. Okay, the next thing you know, the Syrian foreign minister shows up in Moscow making this statement. And we all know from, if you know anything about the law, a lawyer never asks somebody on the witness stand a question that he doesn't know the answer to. So when you have the Syrians coming into Moscow, they're going to ask the question that the Russians want them to ask, especially if it's going to be broadcast. So we haven't heard from the Russians yet. Now, complicating this thing is you have to remember what the Syrian foreign minister asked for. He asked for a Russian peacekeeping force to be deployed on the Israeli border. What does that mean? It doesn't mean the current borders. What it means is the 1974 disengagement line. Now, I can see the Syrians letting our occupation, temporary, we call it, occupation of the Syrian Hermon slide for now. But what they want is that 74 disengagement line, a return to that. Why? Because the Druze will be behind that line. The Druze in Bashan, the Druze in Dara, and the Druze in Sweda. That whole area, they'll be behind Russian peacekeepers. And
totally under the control then of Jolani's
Of
regime.
Jolani and his Al-Qaeda and Bedouin henchmen. We can only imagine how that's going to end. So why would we want that? Why would, more specifically, why would Bibi want that? Well, Bibi, he doesn't want to end up being the proverbial dog that catches the car, which then asks, what do I do with this? Ever since the day after has been discussed with regard to Gaza, Bibi has been trying his best to just punt the day after to anybody who would receive the ball, so to speak, if I can use that football analogy.
Except for Hamas or anyone officially associated with the Palestinian Authority.
However, it was just announced that the Americans have selected the next governor of Gaza.
Yeah, bad news.
He's a former PA economist who is living in Canada now, and he has specifically been ordered to take over control, well, responsibility for Gaza in coordination with the PA.
Right, which basically means the Palestinian
Which
Authority.
basically means, right.
Which basically,
so basically, what we're doing is we're putting our sons, our fathers, our cousins, our brothers, our grandfathers in some case, into Gaza to fight and die, only to turn it over to the PA. Now, if you look at the war plan that we have right now, that's been publicized, it will not end with the total destruction of Hamas. It just won't. We're going to besiege their positions in Gaza City, nowhere else in Gaza. Okay, so they're just going to sit tight. But the end of the line, the end of the story, is that Bibi wants to turn it over to the PA. I mean, that's the net effectiveness.
right, if this governor actually takes over, it's basically giving over to the PA. Whereas voices like me and you have been saying from the outset, the only future for Gaza is total Israeli control over Gaza and the implementation of Trump's immigration plan.
Exactly.
That's it. No Arab self-rule then.
We will never have peace along the Gaza envelope. Our communities will never have peace if there's one Arab left in Gaza. Okay. But so now, when people say, well, how could Bibi abandon the Druze? Well, bear in mind what he's doing with Gaza.
Right.
As far as the Druze are concerned, if we return to that 1974 disengagement line and the Russians are there, he could plausibly say, hey, we can't go against the Russians. You know, if they're slaughtering the Druze, we will make diplomatic representations to them to step in and do something. Right. It'll all be over before we could do anything. And the 700,000 Druze may be slaughtered, all right? So why would he do that? Well, for the same reason that he's willing to give up Gaza. He's not interested in taking over anything right now. If he can get somebody, anybody, to take over this territory instead. So
But I want to add to that, all right? And again, you know me. I'm going to give the background and explanation for it, even though I still believe Netanyahu's decision is wrong. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the background information is that the senior command of the IDF don't want anything to do with controlling Gaza.
Check.
They don't want to stay there.
Check.
Don't want anything to do with staying in Syria.
Check.
Don't want anything to do with staying in southern Lebanon.
Check.
So me and you, we want Bibi to stand for and do the right thing and say, "What? Of course we got to stay in Gaza. Of course we got to stay in southern Lebanon. Of course we got to stay in southern Syria to protect the minorities and to protect Israel."
Correct.
But Bibi is fearful that he doesn't have the senior staff to do it. And I think he still should be doing it, but he's just too afraid to do it.
Traditionally, we've had a situation in Israel where the army thinks it runs the government.
Right.
And it's kind of analogous, in a sense, to the high court.
100%.
Okay, so we have a juristocracy and a militocracy, if you will, if you want to make up a word. Okay, a junta, if you will,
Yeah.
of the high command, which is made up for the most part of progressive leftists. All right. So in this case, the easiest thing, the most appropriate thing for Bibi to have done when this alleged disagreement cropped up between the chief of staff, Zamir, and Bibi over the war plan in Gaza, should have been to fire him.
Yeah, immediately.
And fire the rest of the general staff for him. Just get rid of him. There are enough Jewish warriors available right now
who don't get promoted.
Who don't get promoted to fill those ranks. Okay, so what's going to happen? There's going to be a siege now of the Hamas-controlled areas in Gaza City. And they say that it'll take 3, 4, maybe 5 months to get Hamas to surrender.
Okay. It's insane. Should take less than a month.
Less than a month. And the issue here is, look,
that's what the senior command of the army says. That's showing the problem of the army, the senior command itself.
We need to reprioritize what this war is about by saying, we're sorry, we can't rescue the hostages. They are dead. I'm sorry. If we can, in the course of our combat, rescue some of them, well and good. But the priority is for us to demolish Gaza from Jabalia in the north to Rafah in the south.
And to just re-say that in a way for people to digest, the priority of this war, ending this war in Gaza, is to ensure that we protect 10 million Israeli civilians,
Correct.
To ensure that we never have another October 7th again. That is more important, and it's hard for some people to say this or to hear it. That is more important than saving the remaining 20 hostages.
It's not just,
we want to save the hostages,
Correct.
but that's the second priority. First priority is saving the war to protect 10 million citizens.
And you can go beyond that, and you can say to protect the lives of Jewry around the world, because if we allow Hamas to run the narrative, along with the leftists in this country, what it means is taking Jewish hostages works.
Right. It's appeasing.
And that's not going to just adversely affect us,
Right.
but it will affect Jews around the world.
100%.
You can imagine what will happen if somebody goes into a shul on any of the Chagim on Yom Kippur and takes the whole synagogue hostage in New York. And the argument is going to be, well, you gave up
Got to give everything to save the hostages.
2,000, 3,000 prisoners for one hostage in Gaza, and they still hold them because the Hamas, by the way, will continue to hold hostages regardless. Okay, what are we going to say at that point? The pressure will be enormous on us to do whatever they want. So that's one thing. So the idea of spending 3, 4, 5 months on behalf of the hostages flies in the face of the fact that we've seen at least 2 of the hostages being starved to death. You think they're going to survive 3 or 4 months of our inaction? I call that plan the Zitzkrieg, named after the sitting war, named after what happened in 1940 when the Germans and the Allies in the West just sat and did nothing. It was called the phony war also. And so we're going to have a Zitzkrieg. And how many of those hostages that are presumably being starved are going to live? Well, we'll see them die, because you can be, God forbid, because you will see Hamas propaganda videos showing these guys begging and then dying and digging their own graves. We've seen this, but this time they'll be in the grave. And who's going to have the responsibility for that? Not Hamas. The international media will immediately come to their assistance and say, Bibi killed them. Bibi murdered them.
Right, the Jewish state of Israel.
Exactly. And so the issue here, especially with the day after, is if you are going to allow the Arabs to repossess parts of biblical Israel, which was guaranteed us not only by Hashem, but by the League of Nations mandate and the Treaty of San Remo. This is our territory by law. Then what you're telling the people moving back, or they're forcing them back along the border, is get ready for another October 7th, because the buffer, quote, the buffer that the army said would protect all you people on October 6th won't protect you in the future. We already have an example of how it fails. Buffers don't work.
Right. And if I translate this whole topic into an action item for everyone to end this talk and to go with the positive, because you know me at the Pulse of Israel trying to go on the positive. The talking point to take out of this is for everyone to pound the pavement, spreading the message, as you just said, that the only way to end this war, to protect not just the Jews and the Jewish state of Israel and all 10 million citizens here, but to protect world Jewry, is for Israel to hold on to every piece of our land as the true sovereign, and no longer, what's the word? No longer subcontract
or
the responsibility or renounce our ownership of that land to allow someone else to protect it for us. So if, as everyone hears the news, whether of the day after plan that Jonathan was just talking about regarding Gaza, or this Russian force coming into Syria, raise your voices out loud, contact your Jewish organizational leaders, your Israeli leaders, your US political leaders, and tell them no way. And again, for Israelis, this is our toches on the line, these are our actual lives. But this is also going to impact freedom-loving people all over the world. Like I always say, if we allow this Islamo-Nazi enemy to continue to endanger us and on our borders, it's going to be coming sooner than anyone realizes, not just to Europe, but to North America as well.
Correct.
So it's for you that you want us to do this. And unfortunately, we can get into more detail another time, but Netanyahu is not strong enough to stand up against this. And it's up to us, the Jewish people, to stand up for what is necessary. Jonathan, thank you so much for this infuriating but important information.
I hope we're wrong, but I have a horrible feeling we're not.
All right. I hope he's wrong too, but if you guys hear about these items, raise your voices.
Correct.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Shalom. If you are not yet a subscriber to our daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect, truthful videos about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe today. And yes, we are a donor-based operation. We need your donations for support in order to make these videos and get our videos seen and do all the work we do. So every once in a while, whether a large donation or a small donation, just go to pulseofisrael.com and click on the donate button. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.